Hey guys and welcome. This is part 2 of the multiplayer random world generation series. In the first video we set up this system with this blueprint where when you hit simulate you generate a random grid of maps. They're all the same level at the moment. I've got 5 different levels up here but they don't have anything in them, but these are all different levels and they can all have different assets in them and be whatever you want, and it's a multiplayer replicated system. Today in this video we're going to be tidying up some of the blueprints, and like always everything that I do here will be available for download in the description. The full project files for this blueprint will be in there, so if you want to download those and have a dig through it yourself or just add it to your project, then check out the description and you can get the project files in there. But what we're going to be doing today is fixing up some things that we left off in the last one, in particular spawning in players after the map is finished generating. So for example, if this is a multiplayer deathmatch, you don't want to have all your players spawning at the start, but you won't be able to spawn them anywhere else because the map won't be spawned in yet. So we're going to set up a system where we wait for the map to generate and then you spawn the players in afterwards in each of the corners, for example. And then after that we're also going to add functionality for specific levels. At the moment it's just pulling all of these levels from a random pool. We want to be able to have, say for example in the center we might want this to be a specific like treasure tile, or we might want to randomly place 3 treasure tiles around the map, so we're going to set that up as well. Okay, so let's just get into it. In the last video I had a thing inside this generate random levels function, in the onRep seed, where on the end of this I was calling an event which was level gen complete, and that was actually incorrect because the level gen is not complete after this pin fires. It's only initiated generating the levels as per this function. The level gen is complete when all of the levels are visible. But this thing that we set up here, bind the finish event to the visibility of the last level, this isn't quite correct either, so we're going to disconnect that because sometimes this last level actually gets shown before the other levels. So what we need to do instead is we can probably delete all of that, and once we've actually, what we'll do is we'll put it in here. Once we've finished running through this loop, actually no, we won't put it there. What we'll do is we'll put it on the end. Once we've finished running through all the loops inside of here, which is the exact same pin as I just showed you, we are going to run an event down here which is going to begin checking levels. So what we'll do is load a custom event which will be check if all levels are loaded, or begin check if all levels are loaded. Now this one only needs to occur on the server, so this is happening on each client at the moment. Maybe what we can do is we can just have an authority switch here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get these streaming levels which we saved, and for each of these streaming levels we might actually create a function, collapse this to a function, and call this check if all levels are visible, and we're going to run that function. And inside this we're going to go through each of these levels and we're going to say is level visible, just like that. And this could probably be a for each loop with break, actually, for each loop with break, because we don't need to go through them all necessarily. So is level visible? If it is, great. If it's not, then we are going to have a sequence node which is we're going to have a success variable which by default is going to be true, but if there is a single level that is not, we don't actually need a sequence node. If there is a single level that is not visible, then we're going to mark success to false and then head around there to break. But if this goes through every single level and they're all visible, then this is going to return down here and success is still going to be true, and that's going to be plugged into there. So this return node thing will just be all visible. Okay, so that's checking if all the levels are visible. So back in our event graph, check if all levels are visible, B and left click for a branch. If they're not all visible, then let's have a delay. And go back and just check again. So we'll just keep checking until they're all visible, and you can make that time whatever you want. But when they are all visible, then that's when we fire the event, which we might... The way that we might set this up is with an interface, so we can send this to a game mode or whatever. So if we have a new blueprint interface, just call this BPI and just call it grid random levels. And our function is going to be all levels are visible. Okay, so now when this is finished, we can just say all levels are visible, message. And we can send this message to whatever blueprint we want. So for example, we could get our game mode and then send it to the game mode, okay? So comment all of this. This is saying check if all levels are visible. Yeah. Okay, so now let's say that when all levels are visible, we want the players to spawn from the game mode. But first, let's just check that this is working. We'll just add a print string on the end. And if we hit play, we should get the print after the levels are all spawned. Which we didn't get. I wonder why we didn't get it. Did we actually call this begin check? No, we didn't. So begin check if all levels are loaded needs to be at the end of the onRep seed function. So now, there we go. We got the hello right at the end. Now if you watch it again, yeah, okay. So now if we want to spawn the players in, let's just create a new game mode just so we can illustrate this. Game mode based grid random levels is what we're going to call this. Now if we use this override so that we can use this game mode, grid random levels, I wonder if this will actually give me a playable pawn. Okay, I'm a spectator pawn. I can roll with that, I think. And I still spawned at a player start, I'm assuming. What happens if I move my player start? Let's see what happens. No, I'm still spawning at 0, 0, 0. Give me a sec. Okay, so I figured out what my issue was. I actually had 3 player starts in the middle there, and I was just getting spawned at one of the player starts when there was... I put 1 over here, but there was actually 2 still there, so that was why I was still spawning in the center. So this is the issue. You fall through the floor. So inside my game mode, I just set my default pawn class to my third-person character, so I'm not a spectator pawn anymore. But you can see the problem is that if you've got different player starts across the level, and you press play, you spawn in and you fall through the bottom of the floor. So what we need to do is do the spawning after the map is done. So what we could even do is maybe we'll leave 1 player start here in the center of the persistent tile. This one is always going to be spawned in, but we don't even need this one to be always spawned in. We can dynamically spawn even this first tile. Can I just grab my player start there, please? No, I can't. Because what we might want to do is have, I don't know, like the player start on a tile that spawns in the corner or something, you know what I mean? So like for example, if we have a player start on this one, which I accidentally just put in the persistent, yeah, place. Okay, so now if so I'm hitting simulate, and now all the player starts have probably disappeared, are they? Oh no, they're still here. See, you can see them all across the map. when we do the specific level placing, we might place one in each corner and then spawn a player at each of the player starts, for example. But we're not going to be able to do that until we have the functionality to actually spawn players after the map is loaded. So, inside the grid random levels blueprint, we know that this is working, so we can delete that print string. This is being sent to the game mode after the levels are loaded. So then what you do inside the game mode, we'll delete the stuff that's in there. Let's have a look at these functions down here. What happens if we override the handle new starting player? And if we hit play, okay, I didn't get a pawn this time. I'm just floating around. And what about the other one? Floating around way over here. Oh, it eventually got a map. It took a while, it seemed. I wonder why that took so long. It was a bit odd. What the fuck? I don't know. I don't know why that's happening. Maybe this is broken. I think there's an event in here. Spawn default pawn for. Maybe that's the one that we want. Yeah, okay, so this time neither of us got a pawn. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do this just yet, but I have got a vague idea. So the first thing that we need to do for our game mode to receive that message, all levels are visible, is we need to give it that interface that we created, which was BPI grid random levels. Compile, save, and then right click down here in interfaces and implement that event. This will get fired when those levels are done. So what we need to do now is spawn all of the players. So if we get the game state, this is how you do this. You get the player array. This is how you get all the players that are currently logged into the game, right? This player array. And then you do a for each loop. And then you need to get the owner of the player array, which is the player. These are player states. So the owner is the player controller, which then you can cast to a player controller. And then I suppose we could. I wonder if we can just spawn restart player, perhaps? I wonder if that'll work, if we restart the player and just put it in like that. If that'll actually just spawn them a pawn and possess it. Should we try it? Okay, so that didn't seem to work. I'll just test this off the camera. Okay, so I figured out one solution. We can leave this exactly how we had it. Restart player, that will work, but it won't work if you override the spawn default pawn event, because when it's restarting the player, it's attempting to spawn a default pawn, which it's not going to do because you've overridden the event. So if you leave it just like this without overriding it, and you press play, you spawn in when the map's loaded. But it's still being a bit weird on the client for some reason. It didn't do that before, but what if I load it again? Okay, it worked this time. See, isn't that odd? And see how it's spawned over at one of the correct points? And if we do 4 players, let's see what happens. Oops. Okay, so none of the client maps actually loaded, which is really odd. Let's give it one more run and see what happens. No, it's only loading on the server. So let me figure out what that's all about. Okay, so I figured out why they weren't loading on the clients. There's this concept, network relevancy, which you might be familiar with, but I needed to tick always relevant for this grid random levels because without that ticked, let me show you. Without that tick, see, it only loaded on the server, not for any of the clients, but if you look at the position of the clients, they're all really far away from the origin. And sometimes it loads and sometimes it doesn't. And when it does load, they're closer, and it's loading when they're closer because they're actually network relevant. Now, if you watch the one on the bottom left, see how it just suddenly loaded in because I was moving towards the origin. I finally got close enough for the actor to become network relevant such that it triggered the notify event here to actually fire, because this doesn't actually fire until this actor becomes network relevant, which means it's within this net cull distance squared, or the square root of this, that distance from this actor, unless you tick always relevant, which means the distance just goes out the window and it'll always replicate this variable to nearby player controllers no matter how far away they are. So if we hit play now, you can see that they've all just spawned in correctly like that. So that's how you fix that little bug. So back inside the game mode, this is one way that we can spawn the players at their correct starting points. As you can see, like, they're spawning in just fine now. They get restarted as soon as the map is loaded. Now there are other ways that you could do this. So for example, if you wanted to override the spawn default pawn for event there, and then instead of using restart player, you could spawn actor from class, spawn your pawn, and then possess it using this player controller here. That's one way that you could do it. I'm just going to leave it like this because this works just fine and it's like super neat. So that's good, just how it is. This is restarting the players after the map is loaded. So now I suppose we get into looking at spawning specific levels. So if I were to just maybe change the material of one of these, so just change the floor on this one, and we'll use LC2, or sorry, let's use LC5, I think, because LC5 isn't actually being spawned already. Oh, and we've got LC5 has got some blocks on it, which is interesting. So yeah, we can roll with that. This will be our specific level which we'll be spawning. And it looks like I changed the material in the... Oh god, what have I done, bro? What have I done? I don't know what I've done. Sure, we're rolling with that for now. It's clipping because this is a persistent level and it's also spawning a tile on top of the persistent level, which we're about to fix with the specific levels. So for specific levels, inside of generate new random levels, when we select a level name, we're gonna need to do a check in here. We're gonna work some magic in here. Just gonna turn off that music and pray to God I don't get a copyright strike. So instead of just always getting a random level name, we're gonna run a check to see if we should use a specific level. So let's have... I think we might need a new data structure. No, actually, let's do these in... No, yeah, let's do it in data structure. So, new blueprint. S underscore grid random levels specific. So, each random level is going to have a level name. It's going to have... Oh, my computer's glitching. Just give me a sec. I'm just restarting my editor. You can search this on YouTube, this song, if you want. If you can even hear it. It's a fucking vibe. So... Random coordinates, question mark, we'll tick that to true if we want it to find random coordinates at begin play. Otherwise, we'll use specific coordinates. And maybe we could... No, let's just leave it like that. I think that's fine. Okay, so specific level info is a thing that we'll put down here, a variable that we'll put down here, and then we'll make this an array, and it needs to be a public array, and we'll put that up with the other ones. And I might just rename this to be size X, size Y, and then tile size, and then random level names, and then specific level info. Okay. So I guess what we do is whenever we're spawning a new level instance, let's grab this loop X and the loop Y, and let's make that into an int vector. And just promote this to a local variable and call this current coordinates. And this is what we're going to use to check if there should be a specific level at these coordinates. So I just had a quick change of heart. I was going to have the functionality for randomly placing levels in, but let's not put that in for now, and let's just focus on spawning levels at specific coordinates. I might do that random bit in another video. It's not too hard, it just takes a little bit longer, and I just don't want this video to be too long. So this here is creating the grid, and we're saving the current coordinates of this loop. So then what we want to do is, we might actually even be able to just delete this struct. Actually, we can actually even delete that struct. So what we're going to do is we are going to get rid of that struct down there, because this just got a whole lot simpler. And we're going to have specific level names, which will be names of type array, public variable, and then specific level coordinates. And then these are going to be int vectors, just like before. So rather than having it in a structure, we're just breaking it up into these two like this, which makes our life a lot easier, because now we can grab our specific level coordinates and we can say contains item and see if it contains that local variable that we just created, which is, would you please let me look, current coordinates. Okay. So off of get streaming level name, we can use a select node, and we can check, is this current coordinate contained inside of the specific level coordinates? If it is, then what the flip do we do? Maybe we don't use contain, maybe we use find. We use find, and if it can't find it, it returns -1. So if this is equal to -1, then that means it didn't find it. So if it's equal to -1, it didn't find it, which means we're going to use a random level. But if it's not equal to -1, which means it did find it, it'll return false, which means the coordinates, the level that we're going to use is going to be a specific level, and the index to get of this will be the same index that was found in here. So we use that into there. Did that make sense? I don't know. Basically, this is finding if current coordinates is contained within this, and if it is, then this is returning the index of it, which we'll use to get the level name from that, which will be plugged into there and then used to spawn the level. So hopefully that made sense. If it didn't, well, I don't know. So now let's populate it with some data. So we have our random level names, and then we have specific level names down here as well, which I might do in the default settings rather than do it publicly there. So let's say LC5, and let's spawn you at, I don't know, 3.3, and we're not using the Z. Let's see what happens. There we go. That's it. 3.3 right there. So that's how you do specific levels. Now what I might do, actually I'll just do it and then I'll show you. Okay, so what I went and did was created a player start specific level. Okay, so it's just a block with a player start up on the block. And I also created, not that one, I created an empty level as well, which I'm spawning at the starting point because I just wanted to keep this persistent one here just for an experiment. But I'm spawning three of these player starts in each of the corners, and how that looks like in the blueprint. There are random levels. These are our specific levels. So we've got LC5, which we're spawning in the center of the map at 3-3. We've got LC0, which we're spawning in the same spot as the persistent level right here, which is just an empty map. So nothing's being spawned here, so we don't get textures clashing. And then we're spawning a player start at 6 and 6, and then we're spawning a player start at 0 and 6, and at 6 and 0. So if you look in Simulate, you could have a player start here as well if you wanted, but player start, player start, player start. And then if we hit play in editor, you get one player in each of the corners, okay? Just like that. So I think that is just about everything done. Okay, so I went and built a bunch of levels so that I could show you what this might look like. I've used starter content, but there you go. We've got a randomly generated map built out of a couple of tiles. There's a few lights in here as well. I've set the draw distance on them so that they don't draw while you're really far away, but as you get close, you can see that they light up. So these could be like treasure chests or something like that. And then of course you've got your player starts in the corner. I've got walls on the sides, which I just put in manually. And in the center we've got our big center point. So that could be like a capture the flag sort of thing if you've got players starting in each of the corners. But yeah, that's it guys. Like I said, the project files will be in the description, so check that out if you just want to download this and have a look. Like and subscribe and leave a comment and all of that. I hope this was helpful, and if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments as well. See you next time.